Hermione's Song, Chapter 3 Diagon Alley, The Leaky Cauldron. Tonks paced restlessly in the private room she had procured to hide the doctor while she waited for her boss, Rufus Scrimgeour, to get back with her about what to do about the cat. She guessed that the doctor could hold his own in a fight, but the streets of Diagon Alley were crawling with Death Eaters. Apparently, they took it as a grievous insult when the doctor doused one of their own with ice cream and locked him in the shop. To add to her feelings of being wound up tighter than an Egyptian mummy, the doctor had pulled out a red rubber ball from his jacket. He was lying on his back on the small bed and bouncing the ball off and catching it when it came back. Tonks noticed that he never hit the same place twice, and often bounced the ball off 2 or more walls. Each time, the ball came back to his outstretched hand. Tonks was about to say something to the doctor when she heard a knock at the door.
"Miss Tonks,"
the young maid said timidly from the outside of the door.
"Come in, Sarah."
Tonks replied. The maid was a young woman barely out of school. It was well known that Sarah had a soft spot in her heart for muggles. She rarely left the cauldron since Voldemort had come back to power. She had been wearing a blue robe with a white apron tied around it when they had scampered into the tavern. The door hesitantly opened, and Sarah poked her head in. She had her hand across her eyes, but was peeking through 2 slightly spread fingers. Her hand dropped to her side, and warring emotions crossed her face. Tonks thought she saw both relief and yet a slight bit of disappointment in the young woman's eyes. Sarah caught Tonks staring at her, and she blushed a deep crimson.
"Sorry, Miss Tonks. Tom and I thought that you and that scrumptious gent were engaged in a Nuna," she admitted.
Tonks blushed as well, but her abilities as a metamorphmagus caused her face to turn a candy apple red. Tonks choked a bit and regained control of her skin tone.
"What gave you that idea?"
she demanded. While the idea had its merits, she reminded herself that she was spoken for. Sarah pointed to the doctor, who was still bouncing his ball off the walls.
"Sounds an awful lot like the headboard hitting the wall, miss," she explained.
The doctor caught the ball and then leaned his arm back. He thumped on the headboard, making it hit the wall. "You know, you're right. They do sound similar," he said in a chatty tone. With a flick of his wrist, the doctor went back to experimenting with fourth-dimensional calculus and a rubber ball. Both women stared at him, realizing that he hadn't made the same connection they had. Sarah shook her head and remembered why she had come up there in the first place, other than hoping to catch a glimpse of the cute guy in less than what he was wearing now.
"Mr. Scrimgeour's on the secure floor in the basement for you, Miss Tonks,"
she said.
"Thank you, Sarah,"
Tonks said, and pushed the maid out of the room as she made her way out of the bedroom. She shut the door behind her and gave Sarah a warning look. The maid smiled playfully at Tonks and made her way back to the tap room. Tonks chuckled at the maid's misconception and took the back stairs to the fireplace in the basement. When Tonks got to the basement, the green, glowing face of Rufus Scrimgeour floated in the huge fireplace. "What took you so long, Order Tonks?" he demanded.
"Sorry, sir, bit of a misunderstanding. I think we have it all cleared up for now,"
Tonks assured her boss. Rufus nodded. "I spoke with the Prime Minister, and he referred to this mysterious doctor as the blackest of cats," he told her, reinforcing what she had already assumed. "The PM is adamant that we convince the doctor to go to Hogwarts and speak with Professor Dumbledore," he said. Tonks had a curious look on her face.
"Why doesn't the PM just order him there himself?"
she asked. Rufus chuckled. "I asked the same thing. Majors would only say that this doctor operated very independently," he replied. "He assured me that getting the doctor involved in the situation with the boy would be a tremendous help to us," he said. Tonks gave a palm-up salute, followed by her sticking out her tongue at him.
"Will do, sir,"
she promised. Rufus chuckled again at Tonks' refusal to even salute like anyone else. His glowing image faded back into a green glowing cyclone and then disappeared completely. Tonks returned to the room she had rented and found the doctor had added in the ceiling 2 ever-increasingly complex bounces. She smiled for a few moments at the cute young man, who looked like he was probably just a few years older than her. Finally, she mentally grabbed herself and gave a good shake.
"Here now, we'll have none of that. We're already dating a cute, dangerous guy. Besides, we're here to convince this bloke, okay, really cute bloke, to come with us to Hogwarts, not moon over him,"
she told herself sternly. Tonks decided the direct approach was probably best with an aura of this caliber.
"Doctor, the Prime Minister has asked that you accompany me to Hogwarts,"
she said bluntly. "Which one?" the doctor asked, slightly confused. He tucked the red ball into his jacket pocket that, like the TARDIS, was larger on the inside. "And why Hogwarts? I don't see what a small green plant with powerful laxative properties found in the southern United States has anything to do with me," he added. Perhaps I don't really want to know the answer to that second question. It'd probably just be rude," he muttered. The doctor did give a hint of a grin on his face when he remembered convincing Turlo to eat some after the red-haired boy had irritated him once too often. Tonks stood there, stunned like she'd been hit with a bludger. Her life up until that point left her with no idea how to respond to the doctor's questions. Her hair changed color and turned a shade of green that her friends and family had come to equate with her being perplexed.
I have no clue as to what you're asking,
she said truthfully. The doctor's mind had gone on to other things and looked like he had to forcefully drag himself back to the conversation. Which Prime Minister? He clarified.
The British one,
Tonks said hesitantly, hoping that was what he was asking. I assumed that part, but I guess I really should have asked that too, he admitted. What I want to know is which British Prime Minister, he told her. Tonks stared at the doctor for a moment before answering.
How long has he been abroad?
She wondered. With a shrug, Tonks said,
John Major is the current PM.
The doctor nodded in understanding. Oh, that one, he said cryptically. Still, why does he want me to go visit a plant? He inquired.
I believe he meant the school, Hogwarts.
Tonks tried to explain. You lot have a school named after a laxative? The doctor asked in shock. That's awful, he said, making a disgusted face. Tonks was beginning to feel that they were having two distinct and separate conversations. She arched an eyebrow.
You sound British. If you didn't go to Hogwarts, where did you receive your training?
She asked. The doctor paused before responding. He had a faraway look on his face. I went to a place simply called the Academy, he said. I sincerely doubt that you would have heard of it. It was a long, long way from here, he told her. Tonks noticed the use of the past tense, but decided now was not the time to ask about it.
Doctor, please, my boss said that the PM told him it was very important that you speak with the headmaster of the school.
Tonks relayed.
He believes you might be of help in protecting the children from the Death Eaters,
she said. Death Eaters? The doctor replied, trying to get a feel for the phrase. He decided he didn't like the sound of it one bit. Jerking his thumb in the direction of the ice cream parlor, he asked, Those two we met earlier wouldn't happen to be Death Eaters, would they? Tonks nodded her head, happy that they seemed to be talking about the same thing finally.
Yes, those were Death Eaters, and there are many more like them, some even worse,
she said. Well, why didn't you say so in the first place? The doctor demanded. Of course I'll help, he said enthusiastically. He remembered back to his friend Amy, remarking about ancient aliens and not being able to turn away from Earth children crying. The doctor shot off the bed, startling Tonks. He grabbed her hand and started leading her off to the TARDIS. Tonks dug in her heels and stood firmly in place.
Doctor,
she said patiently while holding out a plain, second-hand black robe. He looked at it quizzically.
Your muggle clothes stand out. Put this on,
she ordered. The doctor sighed and took the robe. He put it over his shoulders, but left the front open, showing his clothes under the robe. Tonks decided to pick her battles and let the odd fashion statement slide. The doctor winked at Tonks. Look at me. I wear a robe now. Robes are cool, he said, running his hand down the front of the robe. The doctor grabbed Tonks' hand again, and she let him lead the way. When they finally reached the TARDIS, the doctor let go of Tonks' hand and got out his key. Tonks stared at the odd-looking blue box. She had been down this street just an hour ago, and she was certain it had not been there before. The doctor opened the door and walked in, motioning with his hand for Tonks to follow. She did as she was instructed, and saw that like a wizard tent, the inside of the box was much larger than the outside. Tonks stopped on the entry catwalk and looked slowly around the large room. The odd pedestal with the glass tube running from floor to ceiling was the first thing that caught her attention. Several passageways led off in various directions, upstairs or through doorways. The doctor was looking at her as if he was waiting for something.
Nice,
she offered. Apparently that wasn't what the doctor was looking for, and he turned to the center pedestal muttering something about no one ever being impressed by dimensional transcendence anymore. Tonks waited patiently as the doctor did whatever he needed to do before they could apparate. The doctor looked up from the center console. Where exactly is this school of yours? He asked. Tonks looked at the doctor, concern in her eyes.
What did they do to this guy if he can't even remember where the only all-magical village in the UK is?
She wondered. Tonks walked up the catwalk towards the doctor.
It's in the Midlands of Scotland, but we should probably go to Hogsmeade first. We don't want to alarm any of the creatures Hagrid has set up patrolling the school grounds,
she suggested. Right, the doctor said slowly. Never want to upset guard animals. They usually end up costing me a new pair of trousers, or shoes, or both, he agreed. I take it Hogsmeade isn't too far from the school? He asked.
The village is just south of the school,
she assured him. The doctor turned towards the console and turned some knobs and hit a switch. A glowing blue map of Scotland appeared in midair in front of Tonks. Can you point to where this village is? He asked.
Can you add topography? I never was very good with Muggle flat maps,
Tonks admitted. The doctor shrugged his shoulders and spun a small wheel next to the knobs he had turned. The map shifted into a three-dimensional rendering of Scotland, complete with waterways and roads.
There.
Tonks said, pointing at the general area where the school and village were located. The map zoomed in, the rest of it flying past her. Every time she pointed, the details became sharper. Eventually, she was able to make out the lake next to the school and individual buildings in Hogsmeade. That's odd. I've never noticed that place before. Almost like a perception filter's in place, the doctor mused. He ran around the console, making the changes in the controls that would send them to Hogsmeade. The glass fixtures inside the crystal center pillar of the time rotor began to rise and fall in time with the sounds of TARDIS flight. Tonks looked worried at the odd chains being dragged over gear sound coming from where the doctor was standing. She waited for the noises to stop before she spoke to him.
Doctor, we have to hurry. Death Eaters are swarming up and down Diagon Alley looking for us,
she said. They'll have a hard time finding us there, the doctor said. He clapped his hands once, spun around, and hit the plunger that opened the doors. Considering we're in that village you pointed out, he said smugly. Tonks cautiously made her way out the front doors. She gasped when she stepped outside and saw the familiar sight of Hogsmeade. She looked over her shoulder at the still grinning doctor with an even greater respect. Tonks was one of the more powerful Aurors in the Ministry, and she could only take one person with her when she operated. The doctor had managed to not only take her, but the entire mass of his strange wizard tent across the country. She felt very confident that the PM had made a wise choice in sending this strange man to Hogwarts.